Ag PhD full episodes and more are now available on Acres TV, the newest ag platform connecting you to fields of information. Look for us on watchacrestv.com.
During our Farm Basics time each week, we talk about something that we as farmers do. And if you are not a farmer, we just want to kind of explain why we do what we do out in fields. Well, today we're going to talk a little about burning crop residue. There's good and there's bad with it. Let's explain.
All right, first of all, when we say crop residue, this is what's left from the last crop produced. So it could be stalks, leaves, those kinds of things, husks from corn or corn cobs that are left in the field after there's been a harvest. And you may say, well, that's kind of natural, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And if we've got great soil health, lots of microbes, plenty of moisture, plenty of heat, lots of time, eventually all those things are going to break down. Everything in the soil is going to feed on the stalks and residue, and we aren't going to have a problem. But here's the problem. A lot of times harvest happens right before a freeze up, and the next spring you want to plant again. Well, that residue's had no chance to break down, and now farmers say, man, what do I do? I got all this crop residue in my field.
So sometimes people will burn it there, but what we look at on our own farm, we almost never are going to burn residue other than a couple situations. One is flooding, where it literally picks up all the residue, moves it all to the end of the field. Now we got a great big pile of residue there. The other reason why we might burn is into our ditches or right at the edge of our fields, just so snow can flow across and we don't have as many issues over the course of a winter. So that's what we do on our farm. But the biggest issue I have with anyone burning residue, other than obviously we've got to be safe about that, we don't want to have the fire spreading, but it's nutrient loss. So we want to talk about how many nutrients we actually lose when we burn residue.
Well, here's the big one, nitrogen. When you burn residue, you're losing about 100% of the nitrogen that was left in the residue, and nitrogen's a really important nutrient.
Yeah, and just to be clear here, that's not taking away all the nitrogen that's in the soil. This isn't nutrients that are in the soil. We're only talking about these plant parts that are left, this residue that's left. It's holding nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus, potassium, and some other nutrients. Well, you're going to lose almost 100% of the nitrogen, 75% of the sulfur, 35% of the potassium, 25% of the phosphorus. So this is the number one reason why, like on our farm, I don't want to burn. I'd rather do tillage or something else. I want to leave those nutrients in the field.
Now, first of all, there isn't a huge amount of nutrition in a lot of that residue that's left laying out in the field. In fact, you think about all the residue in the field, most of it's below the ground. That root system, if you haven't done tillage yet, is still intact and below the ground. We're just talking about stalks and leaves for the most part, and husks, and those usually aren't very nutrient dense.
So with crop residue, the number one reason why a lot of people are even interested in burning it, they just want to get that field ready to go for spring. It'll warm up faster when all the residue is gone, and in some cases, like in our case, we have residue bunched up at the end of the fields once every 10 years or so when there's some flooding, something like that. Our biggest drawback, other than we're worried about fire moving, is just simply we lose those nutrients up in the air. So that's why if we can avoid it, we don't want to burn.
Well, if we were burning, one thing that we may be targeting is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?